Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, John. Everyone in here. So, I think I have not much to reflect. I think all of you made the whole story as an integrate and also make the way for the future very clear. I just hope that for those who spend all the time in the struggle for whatever visa issue, for 2 weeks of running to the embassy to get a visa here, and for those who spend a 20 hours flight, getting trouble in the border, and eventually during the last two days and a half, you find something really valuable for your life and for your research, for connecting the emotional side and the rational side in your mind and also between others. Happening here in a very unique place, Shenzhen City. Our people here, like we have a small team of Open Fiesta, but we didn't have our students on spot yet, so that's why it's pretty difficult for us to coordinate for this activity. But still, we try our best to host you, and we promise next time if we are going to do something similar, I hope you can come back again and see how progress is making here, which is called Shenzhen Street. So the last thing I want to say is, for those who have been, visit a little bit yesterday afternoon to see different part of the city and different potentials, it's really a good chance, I think, to understand firstly how big the world is. You spend 20 hours or somehow getting here, but also how small the world is. That we share so much common interests and common willingness to make the world better, and also how much complementarity we share. That you think probably something can happen faster and better by making benefit of integrating the power, resource, technology in Shenzhen and other places in China. So please come back again and be connected all the time, and let's find a better way for the open world and for the most innovative world.
So thanks for these wonderful moments that we shared. I think, we all have vibrated quite a lot. We've all learned in all of the dimensions of our soul and spirit and intellect and heart. And I think that's those things are special. And so thanks, Stephen and Lupin, for making this possible here. I think that's really a fantastic opportunity. I think many of you have already said this, that they would want to bring this home. They would want others to discover this. And so the question maybe is, how do we make a permanent assembly all over the planet? How do we invite as many people as possible in this sort of conversation to benefit from these sorts of amazing events? I think that, to some extent, Looping is trying to have a local hub that would be a sort of a permanent assembly. I mean, to some extent, that's what we've tried to do in Paris. I think that's what many of you are trying to do in your local places. And I think that by networking, we inspire each other and we help each other and we give each of us the will to go at least one step further. And clearly, there is this Japanese proverb that says, none of us is more intelligent than all of us. But you could say that that applies very much here, and to all the dimensions of our intelligence, the emotional intelligence, the social intelligence, the cultural intelligence, the scientific, and so on. And I think that's very important because we will need ever more of this. What struck me beyond the assembly in the last 48 hours is 2 pieces of news coming from artificial intelligence. Okay? I don't know if you saw, there is Thai, an artificial intelligence robot made by Microsoft that was invited to start discussing openly on Twitter with all sorts of people. And it was supposed to be influenced by others and to learn from others and to be able to do things that were pleasing for the others. And it ended up being a Nazist, anti-feminist, terrible thing. Okay? Because all sorts of ultra right-wing people, extremists, trained it to be like this. In one day, okay? So much that Microsoft had to stop the service. Okay? So artificial intelligence can be artificial stupidity. But we also, it reminds us that we also can be like this. Okay? Because if it's been trained like this, it's been trained by humans, themselves have been trained by all sorts of stupid systems and people. Okay? So we have a big challenge because how do we put more ethics in our life? Okay? Aristotle said that there was 3 forms of knowledge: episteme, which is the science technique, which is the ability to act on the world and those things grew exponentially since then. And the third one was phronesis. And phronesis is the ethics of action. Okay? And for some reason, it didn't grow exponentially. Okay? And for some reason, if we're not able to put it in AI, I think we are going to run into troubles. Okay? And the other news about AI, which makes me hopeful, is that today we just learned that there is an award in Japan for the best novel. Okay? The number 2 best novel of this year in Japan was written by an AI. Wow. So that's quite impressive. Okay? So you can see it on Twitter if you want to have more information about this. But it's just to tell you that things are happening at a speed that amazes me. Okay? And that's even the only thing that goes faster than Shenzhen is AI. Okay? so I think Shenzhen needs more, and maybe more of this collective intelligence and all of this together. And it's clear that the world has so much problems that we need more intelligence. And I think that if the AI contributes to the solution, welcome. That's where I would say it. But at the same time, it can create all sorts of problems, like the Microsoft example just highlighted. So I think we need collectively to be thinking of how do we optimize our local actions and intelligence, but also global. And when global, we should involve not only people from different disciplines and different realms of life, but also intelligences from other realms of not life. And I think that's something which personally starts to impress me by the speed at which it progresses. Okay? I started to dig into this things not so long ago, and every time I see it, it's just going faster and faster and faster. Okay? And so because we have all started with personal notes, I just want to reflect. When I was a kid, I loved games. I played lots of games until 2 o'clock in the morning, even when I was 5. Parents were coming back home, the babysitter was dead, I killed her. And so I love games and all sorts of interactions. And so they found something to quiet me down, which was to play chess, and they bought me a computer. Okay, my grandmother offered me the first computer to play chess. So I guess my intelligence co-evolved with the one of the computer. And so I didn't go into the intricacy of the code of the machine or anything, but I learned a lot from that machine. The same way AlphaGo learned a lot from humans and taught a lot of things to the best Go players these days. Okay? So I think that there could be something about this co-evolution that can be beneficial, but in the same time, I remember that my grandmother also told me that any success you have, any intelligence you have, you should put it at the service of others. Okay? And I think that's one of our greatest challenges, is we've all been gifted with some intelligence, and there is new forms of intelligence arising. How can we make sure that all of those forms of intelligence do something that is more meaningful? Okay? And because that's the one thing that is missing in machines. They cannot define what's meaningful. They can optimize for X, but they don't even know what X is. Okay? And they don't know why X is relevant. Okay? Maybe one day they'll do something different, but that's where we are now. Okay? So what's meaningful? Okay? I think what I find interesting in this artificial intelligence story is that it forces us to refine who we think we are. Okay? So this not thyself in digital era. Okay? I think it forces us to think, what it is to be intelligent, what it is to be human, what is it that we want to do. And I think that, when we discovered all sorts of new forms, of older forms of biological intelligence, like, we discovered chimpanzee can make tools, etc., okay, that forces us to rethink that chimpanzees are culture, it forces us to rethink, what it is to be human. But now we are being challenged on the other side of this artificial intelligence, and I think it forces us to think about what it is that we truly want. Okay? And so maybe we want to assemble together, maybe we want to come together again, maybe we want to do things together for our world and for the next generations. And I think that's really what I'm taking from this moment, is that every one of us can bring something. Okay? And if only we share it, then more and more people can benefit from it. Okay? And because at the moment, a lot of what we do is sort of diluted out. Because in time and space, as you were saying, we leave each other and then poof, okay? But the same way you die and then, but so how do you transmit? How do you pass it on to the next generation? Okay? And so how do we share these things? How do we bring this sort of Shenzhen speed for the better good? I think those are the things that I would like share with you and to invite all of you to reflect on your way back. And so certainly you're all more than welcome to come to Paris anytime. The same way you're all more than welcome to come to Open Fiesta or to Seattle or to any one of you. So I'm extending the invitation for every one of you to every one of you, okay? if I may. I think that's the spirit that we had here, and I think this sort of open invitation is probably the most relevant thing. Thank you.
This was the hardest assembly we've done. Right? This is a topic that we've been arguing about for like 6,000 years as a human race, and we gave you 3 days, right? And we asked a lot of everyone here. We asked an enormous amount of Luping, right? We asked an enormous amount of the people who helped us with the video and the audio and the translation. Right? We've asked an enormous amount of everyone who's come a long way, like Roberto, and I feel exactly how you feel, right? So this is a really difficult event because we gave a question that's not related to any of your jobs. Right? It wasn't about open health and open social impact like last year where most of us worked in open health or open social impact or open education. It wasn't like what we did in the SAGE congresses where we mainly worked with biomedical data scientists. We asked you to debate pretty deep philosophical questions in the midst of pretty rapid technological change, a long way from home. Right? And it's pretty cool that we were able to get where we got because we built a safe space to have that conversation. Right? And it wasn't just about digital sensing. I love the fact that you picked up the through line of us as sensors. Right? That's why Buster was here, to make sure that we had a complete through line through this where we talked about ourselves in the way that we see. Right? And that's why there was art in this. That's why there was construction in this. That's why it wasn't just genetics. Right? But this was a complicated one. And we're a smaller group than we've ever been at one of these assemblies. And so my hope would be, right, that you found something, as Peck might say, serendipity, and a connection between you and someone else that you wouldn't have made otherwise. Because in many ways, that's what does persist when this goes, are these connections, like Kelsey and Open Textbooks Africa. Right? It's those human relationships that are much more difficult to fade, right, than a plan or a project or something else. It's those emotions in those moments. So that's what I'm going to take back in my 17-hour flight tomorrow. Right, is the connection. Right, it's going to be Constantino, right, fixing the displays on the fly. It's going to be Peck and the Slinky. Right, those are the moments that I'm going to take and that I won't lose. But the thing that we were trying to do here was to really provoke us to think about these deep and ancient questions, right, in a city of constant technological change. Right? Because what we've seen through these other assemblies is that those moments of change, when people take them back, right, they can then become change agents back home. Right? And you can spread this message once you get home. Right? And that's really a piece of what you can take away. And in many ways, you can't really know yourself until you've been challenged. You can't really know yourself until it's been hard. And so, my hope is, at least my reflection on this, is this was a hard one. I'm tired, I'm jet lagged, I miss my 5-year-old son. But I learned stuff that I would not have learned if I hadn't pushed myself to be here. And I really hope that the same is true for you. Thank you.
Just a brief thought before I get going. Think hard on your flights home about exponential responsibility. We came here imagining that Shenzhen had a new way of working on open tools. We were imagining it. Luping, we leave knowing it. It's really cool. And it's cool with an opportunity to be helpful to society or not. Okay? Scientists always think that technology is intrinsically good. Okay? It's very dangerous. Okay? Time and time again, this does not happen. Okay? So think about exponential responsibility. Okay? And I think Francois said it very well. Some things seem to be exponential. I'm not sure responsibility is exponential. And I want you to think about what do we do about that? What do we do with the fact that it is not exponential? I think there have been a series of thank yous, but I need to go to Reg and to Diane, who, along with the team, I mean, these things don't happen magically. It's those who put things on like this know it's hundreds of hours, 1,000 hours, okay? And Diane, one of her major roles this past year at Sage was to step up and do the things I often do things that other people often do. And Diane, you took all those roles on, all of them, and so that we're also yourself. So we need to take relationships. There's a book called Innovators. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. It's by Isaacson. And it's a good book to talk about the digital era, understanding computers. You'll see that reference to Ada Lovelace came out of that, right? That's where I got excited by that and had to go off and download her whole treatise and read it again. It's a beautiful book. And there's science in there, but what there's also in there is a description of how innovation happens in the sense that it is never single individuals. And it's never on the shoulders of giants. There's this phrase, it's on the shoulders of giants. No, it's individuals inspired and incapable of working on their dreams until they find others. Okay? And the way the only way you do that is by giving. Okay? You can't do that by going up to someone and expecting them to come to you. They will come to you if you're giving of yourself at whatever level. And Francois, and when he says Paris is an open place and make room, I've been out of Paris more than a dozen times. And I know how busy he is. Every time I popped up in Paris, he was saying, do you want to have dinner the night I get in? Okay? That's what you need. So whether it's with Francois, whether it's with Lou Pink, there is a special character, and I use the word character in an important word. It's not something in your genetics. It's something you culture, right? You have to work on character every day, okay? And if you work on character every day, and you take it seriously, one of the areas that happens is this ability to give and then to get back. And there's no way we would be here today. It's at the level of empathy, but it's at also at a different level. So I think the really important thing is these hubs are real. When I think Lu Ping says come to Shenzhen, he means it. It's not an advertisement. He's not in marketing, okay? He means it, okay? Where's Peter Capitan? When Peter, I'm giving you people who, anyone in this room, okay, wants to go to Amsterdam at any time, Peter will put you up, okay? These are real hubs, okay? And we've been working on assemblies. And when I came here, I had an element of sadness because I wasn't sure we had critical mass. I was really frightened. We've never done this. This is a quarter of the size that is really critical mass for one of these meetings. And I looked around and I felt bad because I invited good friends here and I wanted it to work. And I was worried that it just couldn't work with this. You have proven that you can be 4 people at once. Each of you stepped up. No, you did. And I screamed at you to make you move in to the center, because I know that being, when we sat on the floor and the lights went out, all of a sudden we became a group there, okay? That awful electronics, right, helped us go, hey, guess what? It's just us in this strange land we don't really know. And so that sadness went away. The sadness comes back now because I wish I could live this way every day. Okay? That's what we need to learn how to do. These hubs are a vehicle, okay? And we have to do a better job of having that sense of a hub, of having a sense of that community, whether you're 10 miles away or 1,000 miles. Someone was talking about magical and serendipity. And Francois, who has more amazing unfulfilled ideas in his head than anyone that I've met, was talking yesterday about the wand, right, the magical wand. I want to say something about serendipity in front of Peck. I know it'll be hard, but I'm going to ask you not to step up. I actually believe in when your intent is correct, is the only way you can do a really hard task. Only way you can do a really hard task is when the intent is correct. And the way you know how to navigate, the way I try to do it, is when I see serendipity. When you will know when you're headed down, when it's a really dangerous, unknown black path, you'll know you're on the right path if serendipity is happening. And I think, Chelsea, you couldn't have given a better example, right? You didn't know, but when that serendipity was happening, listen to that serendipity when that's happening, okay? It's real. And that is part of that magic. There's some forces that we don't understand. And I think, so use that as a guide to where you're trying to go. 3 years ago, Hilmi and Subi, I got to meet, and I asked Hilmi, I was interested in corruption in India. I said, there's really a lot of corruption in India. And he said, well, not of the type you think, okay? The major corruption is the corruption of denial, okay? It's of people who started from one place, moved to another, and forgot where they came from. And I thought this is very important, and I think it will be important in Shenzhen, right? And in other places. We forget where we started. And that corruption of denial is important. I think that the biggest problem in getting to know thyself and know our world is you can't see what you're denying. So in terms of asking the right question, we have a real paradox. The things we probably need to know the most and work on the most are those things that we can't find and can't get to. And so think about how you get to those things and how you know that and how you may be able to get there. And then the last thought before going to the presentation is 5 years ago, I realized that my life was often feeling as if it was squeezing in on me. This pressure here, that pressure there. I've got to make the right decision. Sort of this sense of email flowing in, everything else. And I felt there has to be some sort of anecdote for that. And so I decided to build a rear view mirror, one of my art projects that Buster has seen. And I wanted to build a rear view mirror of my life. And so I spent 6 months thinking about intent, thinking about energy, and thinking about lessons learned, not actions, okay? But what were the tools that made me able to do things? And decided to build a project where, working with an artist, 55,000 beads that she used, made images that allowed me to remember the frequency of the important events that were occurring in my life. And I realized there were only 2 or 3 moments a year when I looked back where something changed me, okay? And I'd go through every day, busy, weeks. But if you look back on your life, I will be surprised if you're making deep insights any more frequently than 2 or 3 times a year. You're amazing if you're doing it more often than that. So we need to find a way to realize that our lives in this digital era, right, are getting, shearing forces against them. And I think we have to come up with a way of having a better perspective when we're making choices and to realize that 99.999% of what we're doing doesn't really matter. Okay? And then, from that standpoint, then you begin to get your bearings. And you get to have a better sense of where you're going. So, put this down. Last year, Lu Ping, you remember, it was with a little fear and trepidation that you agreed to have the assembly here. And after discussing with John and Francois and Lu Ping, we, and thinking about Johannesburg, tried to think of where we should hold the assembly next year. First of all, whether to hold it. That's always a big issue. But we did decide that we should. And the choice is the following. Here we are. We've never held it in Seattle. Seattle's not a bad city. I know other cities are good, but it's not a bad city. And what I'd say is going theme, right? The current theme is nurturing communities of novel experts for deeper insights and impact. So what is that? I'm unpacking that. We don't know how to keep this community. Okay? I think we actually have to use the assembly not as a moment of 3 days and gone. I think we have to think going into the assembly and you work there on how you actually have, I think we have enough energy and there it will be 200 plus people, right? We usually have 5 times as many people trying to get in as can come. It does help if you've been at another assembly. It's novel experts. I mean children. I mean people who are without means. I mean machines. I mean everyone but the anointed guilds. Okay? There are a lot of them, and they're really powerful. For deeper insights and impact was just to mean it's not about it's indirectly about economics. It can't just be about monetary means. And to give you a flavor for sort of one of the projects that we're thinking of bringing in, Francois and Parag and Shasha are joining our advisory group this year. And Francois, I want you to go through the next slide. It's yours. And I have one last step.
Right. So I wanted to announce that thanks to these wonderful events, that Francois put on. Actually, I met Lu Ping at an event in Paris with Francois, and had a long conversation with him, and discovered that he was available. So we brought him back to China when I was there. I then met you at a random event, and I think I introduced you too. And so these things take time, but they lead to, I think, wonderful outcomes. So we're going to try and create some more opportunities for wonderful outcomes by mashing up the international community in Geneva, the UN, the boring, stodgy diplomats, with this extremely dynamic community that David Lee has told us and introduced us to here in Shenzhen, also in Beijing. This is a project I'm working on with Lu Ping and many other people. And it will start with a summer school already at the beginning of July in Geneva, 1 week, hanging out in the UN. They're actually not as boring and stodgy as all that. Actually, a lot of them spend a huge amount of time in the field dealing very directly with the problems the world is facing. And they have a lot of deep knowledge, and so we'll try to learn from that and then transform it into practical outcomes later in the summer in a 2-week summer school here in Beijing and Shenzhen. So the theme is crowdsourcing sustainable development. It's open to young people of all ages. So if you're interested, contact me or Lupin to know more about this. If you have students who might be interested in joining us, please let us know. We hope that this will generate, I think those of you who were at Seed Studio yesterday saw what we could do in 3.5 hours. Imagine what you could do over a couple of months, starting off with this event in Geneva. Let's see what we can build on from that.
And then bring that to the assembly, right?
Right, so yes, so definitely, so we bring that to Seattle next year. Right, and definitely hope that there's deep impact there.
Will you do macro as well as micro? I feel like a lot of what we're doing is there's micro, but there's macro
Yep.
civil engineering, which is, I think, of huge importance.
It's up to the
Let me give
students.
one example, and I think Francois, Shasha would want me to give the drop-in. Yeah. So Shasha, a remarkable person at the Gates. I don't know if you could realize it, but the most interesting people of character get to, like Buddha, to be almost invisible. Okay, the people who are really, really changing the world become rather invisible. That's the way Lee Hartwell is. And Shasha offered something informally, but I think he was serious about it. He wants to try, and Bruce, this is to your point, he wants to try having some problems that maybe a particular hospital in Africa, could be a particular problem in Syria or some other place, and put out a notice. Anyone who wants to work on this problem, we're flying in, okay, and fly into a location somewhere in the world and spend 2-3 weeks working on something that is micro, because it's not worth helicoptering like that unless you have something very particular. But he wants to try something along the lines of an issue where open innovation, etc., could really solve some issue. And so I think we'll hear more from Shasha on that. But I hope by the assembly in Seattle that we'll have some examples that go on between this year and next year. And I think Francois, this summer program loop and this concept of coming in someplace and solving a problem, I can tell you that if you can take off like that, it's pretty cool. Arno,
Yeah.
you're 20%, no, I'm just kidding. Okay. And then I want to just end with this, which is Prague talked about a 10-day interval of silence and of hunger and spending time thinking. And having been on some retreats myself, I am offering, we have a location where we're going to have a pre-assembly where you come into Seattle, but you come in 5 days early. And Prague is going to help us, and we're going to run a retreat for the people who have the time to spend 5 days in silence, meditating before you go into the assembly. And I think it will cause a different energy, a very interesting mood among those who took that time. And so between Prague and I, we will set up a way where there will be a pre-assembly retreat. I have a nice location on an island. It's serious. I'm serious about this. An island that's near Seattle that I think we can host this on. And with that, it's just thanks to everyone, right, to Lupin, to each of you. And that's it. Okay, let's use the time between now and when we're going to close to spend a little more time with each other. Thanks.